887 Gospel Countdown. Tune in and be blessed.
This is Renee Wise, station manager for the Boston Praise Radio and TV network of 30 radio, TV, social media, and internet stations. You can broadcast on our network by just giving me a call, 617-282-0685, 617-282-0685.
Always denied. My history is shrouded in a spider web of lies. Isn't this America?
All right, welcome back to At the Round Table with Mel. I'm your host, Larry Ellison. In studio with my brother, Dr. Bradley. The doctor is in the house along with our engineer, our producer, shoppers, dresser in town.
The guy is sharp.
Get that in there. Pastor Hobbs. Yes, you did.
I mean, if
I don't even have to
I'll
say
tell
who
you
he is. People know.
If a fly lands on him, he's going to split it in half.
No.
That's how sharp he is,
wow.
man.
Wow, that's pretty
That guy's
good.
going to be in half, man.
I was going to say he's going to charge him rent.
He's going to charge him rent, dog. You know what I mean? Don't land on that crease. That's not a runway, dog. Okay,
You guys are too much. You guys are too much. Oh, man. Well, we want to thank our sponsor, Guarantee Rate Mortgage Company. For all your mortgage needs, give Branch Mortgage your call at area code 781-342-0252. Guarantee Mortgage is located at 75 State Street in downtown Boston, Mass. Guarantee Rate Mortgage Company, guaranteed to exceed your expectations. And prior, we're talking about Juneteenth, the celebration, talking about the Orange Man, and Dr. Bradley told me I have to get him one of our T-shirts that has the Tide emblem there. It says, voting helps remove stubborn orange stains.
I love it, man. I love it. I love that,
appropriate, right? Because you want
appropriate.
something, right? And voting, it definitely
removes it.
Remove that stain. So before we get back to our callers and that, I know there was a question that came in. We were discussing it off air. From Sister Abina, and she wanted to know
from Australia,
from Australia, down under, of why it is. Can you explain about police shoot to kill decision concerning a knife wielder? So the explanation for here in Massachusetts, and I don't think it's much different than any other state, is that there is different levels. I'll use it at that term, right, of force that can be used by police officers for unarmed and armed assailants. Right. So let's start with the lower level. For someone who's unarmed, Dr. Bradley, right? We're giving certain other tools, mace, now tasers, our service baton for unarmed assailants. And what that means is some people feel like, okay, if a person doesn't have any weapon in their hand and they're just coming at you physically, we're not trained to have physical fights with people.
No, that's not what we're not trained to have.
You were in the academy, so you explain it more eloquently as to.
We come to work to go home, like everybody else, what I mean? But there are, I call it the Batman belt. Okay. All right. There are certain items on our Batman belt that we can pull based on the assailant's resistance. So if the assailant, and we can always be one step above that resistance. Right. That's what you have to keep in mind. So that means if you come to the resistance, if the individual is resisting with his hands or her hands, I can go to my mace, I can go to my service baton, and now I can go to my taser. Right. If the individual has something in his hand that can affect bodily harm or death to the officer or anyone else, then I can move to the deadly force level. Right. So if I have a knife.
Hold on, Dr. Bradley.
Yes, sir.
Y'all have? Because I thought Boston doesn't do tasers.
No.
Some officers do carry.
I'm just telling you. We're answering a question for someone else in another another jurisdiction.
Right, I'll show you. That's all. All
but yes, and I do believe some of the special operations folks are trained.
I don't know.
Tasers.
I don't know, but I'm saying that most officers know. Right. I know Boston. Jamal is correct. Boston doesn't have them, but in my town they do. Yeah. But that has been seen as a weapon to use when a person is resisting without being armed.
Right.
But when a person is armed, then the officer can go one step above that resistance.
Right. And to that point, folks feel like Dr. Bradley, Pastor Hauser, one of her questions was, why don't they shoot people in the hand or the arm and the leg?
We're not trained that way to do that.
We're not trained, and it's in the description as deadly force, and by that meaning is that if you have a knife or you have a weapon, and if I shoot you in the leg, you could still cause harm to me or someone else. It is to stop the threat.
You have to eliminate the threat.
Right. And so the vital organs are not in your leg and your arm, and even though if you hit the main one, you could bleed out. But the training and statistically, if you're trying to stop the threat, that is what you're going to do, because we've had to evolve. I mean, when I first came on the job, the description is you could shoot a fleeing felon, right? And that's why you saw so many people were getting shot running away from stolen cars, because it was a felony to steal a car, right? Because it was a total value of the vehicle. That law was changed and the rules were changed, where you had to know now for an actual certainty that the delay in capture of that individual will lead to death or bodily injury.
The United States Supreme Court, in this case, Tennessee v. Garner, actually changed that law.
Right.
So you have to be able to prove,
and that's a very high level.
It's a high level. That the individual that you actually shot while he was running away from you actually had committed deadly force, was in the process of doing it, or if you fail to delay or you delay in stopping him, he will do it.
Right.
And so you have to be able to articulate that in your report, and also have articulable facts in court to say this is why I had to make that decision.
Right. And the training has gotten better, because you think about last Friday, there was a Boston officer shot down in Roxbury. We were talking about on the broadcast, and from all indications, and I don't know anything about it, but he was shot twice, is an incident where he most likely could have used deadly force, right? And he showed a lot of restraint by not using deadly force. It doesn't get discussed. He couldn't
use it when the guy had the gun. Absolutely.
Right. Doesn't get discussed. He from all indications, he happened upon someone who had a gun out robbing someone, right? And that could articulate, but in all indications, it looked like he used a lot of restraint and not using deadly force. But I think there's
almost got killed himself.
Right. I think there's a little apprehension these days with officers, and why it's difficult recruiting. And from what I heard recently, correct me if I'm wrong, Jamal, that the mayor has announced that they want to in the $31 million budget cut from the police budget. They want $31 million from the police budget.
I thought the mayor Wu actually rejected that. She did, because there was cuts to the police and it was cuts to the veterans budget. I mean, I'm just going by the globe.
Okay, so that's the report I had, and I'm glad to hear that, because I'm like,
the council put forth this the original budget, and then she rejected it, and the last thing that I'm seeing now is there's some sort of kerfuffle there.
Yeah, I mean, it's just getting ridiculous to where I don't know what you think you're gonna, if you start eroding and feeling that you're not gonna pay people a living wage to have to live and work in Boston. Who you think you're going to be recruiting? We've seen in other cities and towns across the country, when you start lowering the pay, you start lowering the standard, and you get what you pay for in all indications. I'm not saying that's always the case, but pretty much. It would. So I'm glad to hear, Jamal, that the mayor has rejected that, because and
so and I want people to understand my position, which is that my position on stuff like this, I don't have a position, which is I've said for years throughout all my advocacy, police reform, and all this, when I was seeing anti-cop and everything. I remember one time when Linsky invited me to come up to the academy to see the training. And because he was giving that offer was being made to many of the perceived leaders, NAACP churches or whatever. I was like, I don't need to see your training. We've never had a conversation, or I've never said y'all don't get good training.
Right.
I believe the hype in terms of Boston receives at least top 5 or top 10 in the country, some of the best training in the country. I believe that. The question is not whether cops. The question is, cops are not trained to beat their wives, right?
Right.
Yeah, but that happens. Cops are not trained to do drugs. Yeah, but that happens. Cops are not trained to drive drunk, but that happens. So the point is not about training, which people want to prop up, but what happens when people deviate from the training? That's the question of, sane-minded individuals like myself and sane-minded individuals like myself were never saying defund the police or dismantle the police. What we were talking about, in essence, is just we want good police. Because I know when I was living in Atlanta, my grandmother calls me up at 3 o'clock in the morning saying she hears something out in the back. Who's she gonna call? Right. Ghostbusters?
Right.
What are we doing?
It's allowed to. Yeah. Yeah. No, you're right. Well, that's what I said. You're gonna call Ghostbusters. That's what you're not gonna call 311. You're gonna call 911, and that's what people continually do. That's what But and we still have to come. We don't get to choose which calls we go to. If the dispatcher dispatches me to a call, no matter how many times Dr. Bradley, you've been there. It's like, oh, it's Mrs. Jones again. It's that family every Saturday morning, right? Yeah, or every Friday.
But see, I think you touch on another point though in policing that I think that need to be a little bit more prevalent in how we do our job in law enforcement. Is that we constantly go to the same location. When I was a commander of 911. I did analysis, and it pretty much came out that like 72%, 2% of the city residents produce 72% of the 911 calls, which means that we were going to the same calls over and over and over again. And so I asked the question, why can't we go to these calls and try to figure out what are the social impact, what are the social issues that are causing this to happen? Because we're going to the same call over and over and over again.
And we've implemented a lot of that, right? They have a social worker that is the best team that's riding around with officers that respond to these calls. I don't see any lessening of the calls for service in these matters.
I haven't been there in 13 years,
right?
But what I'm basically saying is that we have to rethink how we're policing too. In terms of how do we deal with social issues that tend to manifest itself into crime. How do we actually deal with those social issues to prevent that? Overpowering, I should say, clogging up the criminal justice system.
Right.
Oftentimes, we're putting everything in the criminal justice bucket.
Right.
All the social ills in the criminal justice bucket.
911 is the default for everything, right? When you can't figure out what governmental agency who
call
to
911.
911, right? Even though they put out a 311 call number, right? People don't call that; they still dial 911, even for simple things as directions.
When I was a commander, if I want to know the time of day, when I was a commander, they'll call 911.
Right?
It's like, dude, you don't call 911 for the time. You're tying up in line. Right. But anyway, I hear what you're saying.
Yeah. So, Jamal,
hey, not for nothing. That's because they got rid of. Remember back in the day, they used to have WE6 11111, and you could call and get the weather and
the time. Yeah, that's right.
Remember that?
Temperature 46 at the tone. The time will be. I forgot about that. Well, you know it well, right? I used to call it because I didn't have a phone, I didn't have a watch. Those were luxuries, and now people have them. So Jamal. Again, we were talking about the Orange Man, and all of this, and that, the sad part is that we have black people in Florida and other states who can't vote after serving their time, paying their debt to society, and yet we have someone who is now twice indicted, twice impeached, civil lawsuits, company criminal responsible for paying fines. Everyone around him is going to jail. As I told Dr. Bradley, the word on the street is the MAGA stands for make attorneys get attorneys. And yet he's the leading candidate for the Republican Party to be their nominee for the president of the United States. And they say he's a victim, right? How many people do you think that look like us? Matter of fact, that don't even look like us. You think about the kid there from, I think it was Raynham or whoever it was, that was just indicted.
He's down from the Cape.
Yeah, okay, just indicted for similar behavior, and he didn't give he wasn't given the opportunity to just turn over what he had. He had to be held accountable. Donald Trump had the opportunity on numerous occasions to give this stuff back, and it showed his willingness to not only not give it back, even after he was ordered to do so, even after he was subpoenaed to do so. He, with his aide there, his bodyguard there, Walt, decided that they were going to move these things around and hide them from the government.
Well, this is where, like, okay, so I go on the Dr. Bradley approach. We have a test subject, a case study of a true believer. So you know how CNN will go around and they'll be like, hell, they'll go interview a couple of Trump supporters and be like, so, hey, how do you feel now? Mm-hmm. Well, we have our own in our midst. Mm-hmm. So I would really love to see if Pastor Dan Walker really still supports Trump through all of this. Mm-hmm. Because I think that's a case study, because I don't think any of us would say that he is, insane, like out of his mind, like he should be institutionalized. Mm-hmm. He's a regular black guy who just has a different, view than us. Mm-hmm. But it would be very interesting to see with his rationalization, his intellect, his Christian viewpoints, mm-hmm. after all, and his, American ideals, like, is he still rocking with Trump? Or does he now also understand, wow, I might have been wrong about this guy? Or no? Because I think that's going to be the gauge for us.
But to that point,
that's the canary in the coal mine.
Dr. Bradley has already put out that invitation for that call. But to that point, it's not just him. I mean, some have broken, like the Chris Christie, and even his former vice president is now trying to have it both ways. First he was saying that it was wrong, but now I can tell folks, reading the indictment, you see exactly, like Dr. Bradley has read it in its entirety. I have read a little of it. I haven't gotten through all of it. But I believe Dr. Bradley, and I believe the folks who have been saying it. They said, look, you don't have to take my word for it. But there's this deep-rooted, this is the deep state, in that this is a weaponized, the Department of Justice, that, Donald Trump is a victim.
But it's weaponized when the Department of Justice is doing its job and going against someone that they support. When they're going against someone that they do not support, it's a great thing that since sliced bread. But listen, I read as you alluded to, I read the indictment, mm-hmm. and as a member of academia, mm-hmm. and as a former police officer, I would say what Bill Barr said. He is toast because pure possession is a crime.
I was going to ask you, and you've kind of answered it. What stuck out to you in that indictment that you read? What stuck out?
What stuck out to me was the content of the documents and the level of security of the documents that he had in his possession. Mm-hmm. Those documents should have been reviewed in a secured area and then burned or given back. So usually when you're looking at, I had a top secret clearance when I was in the Army. I was a 72 Echo, which is a high-speed typist, and I had to deal with all information coming in from different parts of the government, mm-hmm. Into Asia. So I worked in the Asia theater. All right, and if you think about it, I was in Korea. In Korea, we're still at war with the North Koreans. We had a truce, but there was never a declaration to end the war. Okay. So that information was very, very sensitive. When we viewed that information, when we got copies of it, you have a teletype and you have like the original copy and then a receipt copy. We had to burn those receipt copies, and when we gave information over to the commanders, they had to burn the information. So you can't keep that data. Right. So when he had it, it's just a pure possession and the level, the content of those documents. Was against
he had nuclear positions, right?
Yes, that's what.
He had, and he had super stuff.
He also had weaknesses. That's the key.
Right.
He had weaknesses of our military, and he wanted to keep that. And the other thing that jumped out at me as a former military man and a police officer and all the other things that I have done in my brief 67 years of life was that where he stored it. And people, not only where he stood, but the access that people had. Because when you think about documents, all you don't have to remove the document. You just take a picture and you got it.
Exactly.
All right, and so you have a situation where they had pictures in the indictment where the boxes was tipped over and documents were on the floor. Was indicative to me as an investigator, as someone went through that document, took a picture and left it there in a hurry.
And so, Dr. Bradley and Jamal, we all know with Donald Trump, everything is transactional, right? So to say that he was just mementos that he wanted, like he was showing off his sneakers of Shaquille O'Neal and things of that nature, those things aren't going to hurt national secrets. They're not going to hurt our national defense. This type of behavior, like you said, spies, if they get what they want with a snap of a picture, they don't want to take it. They don't want you to know that they have it. So we really don't know.
We don't know
the damage.
We won't know. I tell you, the only way that we will actually have an inkling is that people who are working in other countries with us start falling dead.
And that's There you go.
That's when you're going to know that, okay, this is out. Personally, I think he released it when he met with Putin in Helsinki alone.
You remember when he said, he has no reason, he didn't believe our national security people. He believed Putin, and Putin had no reason to lie, right? But that's coming from somebody who's a habitual liar himself. So again, Jamal.
Well, not to mention, I increased business productivity. I took one note from Trump, and I've increased my business productivity probably by 200%. And I've moved my copier into my bathroom. A lot more done.
Well, when you're taking care of your business, it always work.
I know a lot of people do a lot of reading in there, but it was interesting.
If you run out of paper, it's paper.
Right. But here's that's true. But here's the thing, Jamal, Dr. Bradley. These are not people that are coming forward, that are being interviewed, that are talking about his reckless and criminal behavior. These are not people who are. These are people who worked in his inner circle. This is someone who claimed he hires the best. The best.
Well, see, I think it's two things. Number one, like I said in the last hour broadcast, I'm really upset with the people who are coming speaking now when they should have spoken when he was doing this. That's the first thing. The second thing that I think is really sad is that they can't defend his behavior, so they attack the institution that actually holding him accountable for the behavior.
And that has a damaging effect, right? Because one of the things, even as bad as the Supreme Court up until recently, we might have not liked their decisions, but we didn't feel like it was political, right? And now everything seems political, and Donald Trump has politicized it. Like, the judge that actually has the case now, who in her original finding when the documents were brought, she was bending over backwards, that somehow because he was a former president, he had these rights that the rest of us did not have as being a former president. As you said, we don't have kings in this country. So how is it that he gets to act in this manner and not be held accountable? Because there are a lot of people who've been indicted for things people would say are not as egregious as this, and yet they have to be held accountable.
Possession of the documents is grounds for prosecution,
right?
Not just possession, and I think that's important. That's why I say he's toast. To just possess those documents is ground for prosecution. So therefore, he is toast. If this is done correctly, if they can prove, and I don't see any reason why, because the government usually doesn't go after you unless it actually has the proof in hand. His boy Nada. His behavior. I'm like, dude. Well, you know what I mean? His behavior. When you read the indictment, his aide Nada, Waltine Nada,
right?
That individual. I was like, what planet are you on?
Right.
They're asking you a question. You should assume that they already know the answer.
Right. Exactly. So, and he doesn't understand that he doesn't have the same protection that Donald Trump may have, right? Because Donald Trump is going to argue the Presidential Act, which doesn't apply to this from all I've read and all I've heard. But
yeah, that's the dude that said, I didn't move no boxes. I only moved 36 boxes. I only moved 5 boxes.
Or the boxes. I don't know if the boxes were secured or not, and he knew that the boxes were not secured.
Right, but he's banking on two things. One, that Donald Trump gets elected, he's going to pardon him if he is convicted, which most likely he will be.
He will be.
And even if he is convicted and Donald Trump doesn't win, if he does 4 or 5 years, that the Trump family is going to have a nice little golden egg for him. What he doesn't understand is Donald Trump has no loyalty. If you look at the number of casualties, right, from all the people, Michael Cohen, and the list goes on and on of people in Donald Trump's inner circle, right, no one has fared well for being loyal to Donald Trump.
Well, the way that I look at it is that Donald Trump's loyalty to you doesn't extend beyond his need for you.
Right.
All
yeah,
right.
I like that.
So, that's what. So once you become no longer useful for him, he's no longer loyal to you.
If you notice, what's been noticeably absent from this is his daughter Ivanka, who's one, and his son-in-law Jared. Now, his other 2 sons.
Oh no, his wife.
Yeah, that's. Oh my God.
Yeah, right, Jamal. Right. Yeah, I know.
That's a good point.
Yeah. Right.
That is a good point. I mean, his wife having her hair done while he was being. I'm like,
she started looking for.
My wife would never go to she would be right there next to me to make sure that I'm okay, even psychologically to make sure that I'm okay if I was going through that
showing
type of
that
situation.
she supports
exactly.
Right?
Not going to get her hair done while I'm actually fighting for my freedom.
Because I think they've been living separate lives for quite a long time.
Yeah, I do too.
It's not a Coke and a smile he's getting from her. It's not a Coke and a smile.
There's probably some Coke involved.
Yeah, right, but not the in the red can.
Well, I have my comments about her as well.
So, gentlemen, I want to pivot back. We're going to continue to talk about that. I want to pivot back to Juneteenth, and again, barbecue today.
Well, see, and my comment on that one, Larry. So again, for those individuals who's probably joining us on the 8 o'clock hour, I'm gonna go through a brief history. So in June 19th, 1865, General Gordon Granger landed a force of 2,000 Union soldiers in the Bay of Galveston, Texas, and he informed 250,000. Remember that 250,000 slaves that you're no longer slaves. You are now free. And this law has just been this holiday has just been signed by Biden in 2021. By the way, this happened back in 1865. So that's really where everything starts. What I would like to see, because I agree with the young man during the 1776, we were not all free. Black people were not free. Although we fought in that war, we were not free. We fought in every war in America. What I would like to see happening here is that it doesn't become like a routine barbecue.
That's what it's become.
Dancing.
That's what it's really become.
What I would like to see, Larry, why can't we have stations for voter registrations at events?
We do. We have them there. People will sign up, but we used to have them voter registration. People, when you registered for your license and all that, but then actually getting them to execute.
Well, that's the other side of it, though. See, you got them at that point. Because now when you're registering, that you have to, at that point, try to convey the importance of actually attending and actually pulling the level or writing it up.
But Dr. Bradley, can I
go ahead, Jamal.
I want to interject this. Hey, both of y'all should know this. And this is what my elders told me. From the merging of the Black Power movement and the Black Arts movement, right? So y'all remember back in whatever it was, I think 72, was the political convention in what was that, Ohio? I'm messing the story up already. I should know this off cap. But when they had the national political convention, they had all the politicians out there, and also co-convened by Mary Baraka, right? Who, at that time, poet, author, playwright, right? So there was always this Black power, Black politics, and Black arts movement. Okay, back then, from the way I heard the story, James Brown was doing his thing and whatnot. It was folks who came to him and was like, brother, we need some sort of anthem. And then that's when he came out with Say It Loud, I'm Black and I'm Proud, and the differentiation when he decided to cut his perm and go to the afro and all that. So all I'm saying is, we've been a party people, if you will. Right? We enjoy music. We enjoy the dance. It's all part of our culture. The thing that has changed now is that there is no political underpinning. The movement that now said, like, that inspired the Isaac Hayes, the James Browns, all these people to make songs that were songs of revolution, even if it was given in the format of R&B, jazz, soul, whatever. We've lost that. Now it's just shake your booty.
Right, but see, Jamal, you bring up a very valid point, and it wasn't just James Brown, Marvin Gaye, right? It was in our music, right? Say it loud, I'm Black and I'm proud. So it was in our music. Now, what we say about each other is stuff that we would fight people for calling us, and now it's in our lyrics, it's in our music. That is not uplifting, calling women the B word and calling ourselves the N word and all that. So
and we're killing everybody.
That's become our anthem.
But I think that's calculated, though. See, I think someone in somewhere in some room sat down and talked about having the money and using that money to actually change the mindset of people that are in that caste level that we'll call lower caste Black people, because in my day, and I'm going back to the 1960s. I was born in 1956, so I'm going back to the to 59, between 59 and 80. When you had a situation where music reflect the times that we were struggling in the Black community. All right. You had it in your music. So it was not only about love, it was also about, revolution. It was all about being treated. Today, the individual who are producing these rap songs, they're talking about killing each other. my mama is this, and your mother, your sister is that. So the mindset, so the message you're sending the young people. That in those days, I was the young guy, that I should love my brother. Right. I should not kill my brother, although we had issues, but usually it's a fight.
Right.
Best you would go with is a knife. That was it.
Right.
All right. But see, now it's all about, I'm going to blow you away. Right. I got to use my AK.
But to your point about the love, right?
Yep.
When I hear the music and I reflect on it, now I know why people had 12 and 13 kids, right? Because the music was generated.
Doc, you know what? I have a lot of families back then. I have 5 kids, 2 of which I planted. They both got planted off Barry White, though.
Oh, see.
They both got
practice what you preach.
Practice what you preach.
All right, let's grab some of these. Let's grab some of these. Let's grab some of these calls. The lines. Let's grab some of these calls. We have to keep it PG. I was just
love making music.
There we go. Good morning, Siddiqui.
How we doing?
Good. How are you?
Doing all right.
Yeah.
Look, I'm calling in the spirit of Juneteenth. I don't know if you discuss it or not. Has anyone talked about what's happening over there with the O'Brien High School?
We didn't discuss it today. We did discuss it in our last week, but if you want to give us an update or what your thoughts are on it, please feel free.
Yeah, well, we did a press conference yesterday. Mm-hmm. Essentially what it is that Mayor Michelle Wu is proposing, and I know you're familiar with it, that the John D. O'Brien Math and Science High School on Northwest Boulevard in Roxbury be moved to West Roxbury, to that former complex that was shut down. Mm-hmm. And the logic that she's putting out there is that they'll be able to expand the O'Brien from 1,600 to 2,000 and improve the quality of the facility there, well, Madison Park High School and what have you. Mm-hmm. Look here. The bottom line is that this community needs to wake up about the fact that Mayor Wu has no respect for the black community whatsoever.
But Siddiqui, let me jump in there a second for what you're saying. Was there anything in that statement or that press release from the mayor? I hear improving the facility, about improving the education, because Madison Park is last I knew it was a level 4, which means that even prior to the state talking about taking over the whole school system, was going to take over that school. So was there anything in that alluded to the lack of learning going on there?
Yeah, what we stated essentially to address what you're talking about was that, number one, that's a huge facility over there that, we have architects in our communities that could transform it into what we want it to be, number one. And number two, we said that 2 things, that it could be state-of-the-art there, not only from the aspects of the facility itself, but also there has to be highlighted the whole issue of improving the academics.
Exactly. That's what I'm talking about. The learning component has been absent, right? So if you build back the different industrial aspects of it, right, and the trade aspect of it, right, but if these kids are not learning, like I attended most of the graduations that took place during this season. There's a couple of more that are in on the books, right? But most of them, and these kids, most of them can't read what's on their diploma.
Well, yeah, I agree. Let me just say that the potential is there. Just like the vocational tech high school in Worcester, it was rated the worst in the state years ago, and they put money. Now it's rated, if not the top, near the top. Right. But the bottom line is that we cannot. Let me just say this, that when she came out, well, it was in the bed of the press conference, announcing the move, I thought there was going to be huge community opposition, and I said, I'm going to support whoever steps up. Nobody did, so that's why we did the press conference, to try to get that type of momentum going. But what it is that it's a pattern of the mayor.
So
like, for instance,
because I want to grab this other call in a second here, but I want to ask you, how many people showed up at the press conferences? This is not to any disparaging of what you guys were trying to do. Mm-hmm. I'm saying compared to how many people will show up today for the barbecues, and that's the difference. Right?
Well, hold on, because Siddiqui called me. Mm-hmm. Like, Siddiqui, I did get your message, but my wife had already contracted me to another event that I could not avoid, and so I know where you're going, and that's key. because if people don't show, then she won't get the message. That I can't do this without having it being politically painful.
That's right.
For me to do. But
that's why I asked how many people showed up.
But, it was kind of short notice, just like Brother Doctor was talking about. But we had a few people there. But we're just hoping that we're lighting the fuse for folks to stand up and say no, that the O'Brien is going nowhere. But we have to make that statement to the mayor. Let me just say this an example of how disrespectful she is. Mayor Wu, to that press conference, invited the president of Bunker Hill Community College to be there. She never contacted Jackie Jenkins Scott, who's the president of the RCC right down the street.
Yeah.
That's the type of situation we're talking about. Mm-hmm. So we have to make it very clear to her, because she has a pattern of disrespect that under no circumstances, because I was talking to the president yesterday of RCC, Jackie Jenkins, and they're talking about that becoming the science corridor with RCC, Madison Park, John D. O'Brien, and the soon-to-come Benjamin Franklin Institute of Technology. We hope we're going to change that name because it's a slave owner. Okay. But I'm saying, but the bottom line is that she continues to, whether it be about land disposition, the redistricting map, the whole thing right there. Her perspective is, you know what? These black people, I can do what I want, but they're not going to do anything I'm saying.
Well, I think right before I get to this, I want to grab into the call. Ziggy, stand by. But it's also in the budget, right? I mean, you look at the money that's being allocated for Chinatown, West Roxbury, more what considered the more affluent or connected neighborhoods. You see the redistribution. We're not getting much of that. Dicka, you want to respond?
Yeah, I want to respond by saying that. Politically speaking, this is what happens when black people rely so heavily on the Democrat Party for over 60 years now. Black people have been voting Democrat, and what have we as black people gathered? Backstabbing and absolutely nothing in return, no?
I don't think it's party affiliation that is the problem. I think it's us getting together and dealing with our issues and highlighting and demanding, just like the other side is demanding. Right, what they're doing is they've galvanized together and they say these are the issues that we feel we want, and we don't care what the person is packaged in, how bad they are, how criminal they are. As long as they're carrying our water for what we want, we're gonna get behind that. That is the most important. We don't have that same attitude. As soon as somebody stubs their toe, we're quick to run away from them, right? Even though folks have been leaders. Good, Jamal.
I just want to point out a couple of points of common sense. And I swear to goodness, this comes from the place of common sense. First of all, you cannot judge a press conference based on its attendance if it's done on a Friday. Everybody in the media world knows that Friday is the worst day to do any type of press anything. And particularly on this weekend more than anything. That's the crux of Father's Day weekend, Juneteenth. So I would hope to say that anything that any organizer would want to do, if you do it on like Tuesday, I found most success with, maybe a Wednesday or whatever, but Friday is always difficult, and this has to be probably one of the most difficult Fridays ever.
So Jamal, let me just interrupt you for a second to that point before I lose my train. Because here's the problem I have with that is that you're right. The press conference, time and place matters. But if I said Thursday night that I was going to be giving away 10,000 turkeys at Mamleo the next day,
I had the same thought.
Right. I wouldn't have any problem getting rid of them. So it's about what we prioritize, and something of that importance of taking a school, especially a school of that magnitude, out of our community. People should be able to respond rapidly to that, but we don't. We prioritize what we think is important. The materialistic, like I said, if D Nice, I don't even know who that person is, was going to be performing today, and I don't know,
they would be there.
It would be packed,
and I guarantee you, the media would be there if you had a huge, a large crowd of people, regardless of the day. They would come out because it would be newsworthy for them to do so.
Right.
So I hear what Jamal is saying, but I think that there has been examples where people, the news media will drop what they're doing because they found that this particular issue was much more newsworthy than what what they were on.
So watch this. Back to the original point. the merger of the Black Power movement, the Black Arts movement, and everything. Okay, cool. So over the weekend now, we've had, Kai and Chris Grant did the block party that Siddiqui was referencing, last week we was talking, right? Mm-hmm. So they did the block party. That was a tribute to Keith Elam, who became famous as Guru, right? Keith Elam, right from here. Bong, a lot of people out there. DJ Premier, one of the biggest DJs in the world, was here. Then after that, Just Blaze just came here, and now D Nice is here. These are some of the biggest DJs in the world. During COVID, D Nice was the guy who was doing all the jammy jams and all this. But what I'm saying is now, even with our political connections, black community and all this, people we even know and everything, there was where was the major push for that to be anything other than a jammy jam?
Right.
And take the booty down. So there was no black political or black power component to that. Even if when they did the block party down Nubian Square, right? To push Siddiqui's point, was the question even brought up about, hey, do y'all want Nubian Library? Because that would have been the day you could have had 1,000 people screaming it, Nubian Library over here, Nubian Library over there. Yeah. And see, but we no longer are either able to take advantage of these opportunities or we are failing to do so. There's either a disconnect or we're failing.
Well, here's one I think we're missing out on and we're not leveraging, right? The NAACP is going to be holding their convention here in July, right, in Boston. Why are we not asking them to weigh in on such important matters that are taking place here in the city of Boston? Because they're coming here highlighting their convention being in Boston, right? This is a prominent organization.
Yep. One of the old gatekeepers.
We bring them here, we bring them down to the seaport, and we make them oblivious to what's happening on the other side of the people that look like them, right? Because they're going to see very few people that look like them
in the seaport,
in the areas that they're going to be.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a very good point.
Siddiqui, you should organize the NAACP tour to Nubian Square.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I'll leave that up to you.
Everybody can buy cigarettes. All these people come from out of town. They still smoke Newports. They can't get Newports when they come to Boston, so you got to bring them down Nubian so they can get some Newport.
Yeah. Jamal, stop it.
So, again, why aren't we leveraging what we, that's what, during my time as president, I always saw what was going to be beneficial in time and location, right? Working smarter, not harder.
Yeah.
And if I knew the NAACP, I would be talking, whether they listened or not, I would be out there with the megaphone, saying, what's your point? You guys are coming here. What are you coming here for? To host a convention. What is it that we're selling in Boston? The gentrification, the lack of education, the fact that the state wants to take over the schools. What do we say? What do we say? That black people can't afford to live in the communities that they used to be in. What are we coming here to support in the Boston area?
They've been pushed out for taxes and pushed out for gentrification and rent.
So, Ditko, you've been taking all this in. What's your thoughts on this?
That's the same old game that's being played constantly. That black people rely so heavily on politicians that last time I checked, we as both equal men and women here knows what's best for us, that we can decide how things should be to have a better quality of life in Boston. Getting rid of I'm not saying get rid of gentrification, but stopping gentrification. Making sure these politicians listen to what we want them to say, instead of just letting them think that we're a bunch of dummies. So,
well, I think they figured out that, like I said, they look at the votes. I see in this budget, it's clear, who is getting the support, and it's clear who's not, and lack of folks stepping up. It's not going to change. It's not going to change. I mean, like I said, my focus right now, if I was with this little window I have, would be advocating for the NAACP to weigh in on these issues, because they're coming here and saying, well, why are you coming here? And threatening and asking them. The worst thing they want to do is having them, even though they wouldn't stop it, but asking them not to come to Boston. And here are the reasons why. Boston is not growing in a way, having faces in places does not move, as Sister Priscilla was asking, Isaac Yahoo, what's his staff? What's his budget? This is a senior policy advisor for public safety for the mayor. Public safety is a huge issue here. I get to tell people, show me your budget, show me your staff, and I'll show you your commitment. Right? One person is going to deal with all these issues. Pastor Hobbs has some comments here he wants to say.
Patrick Wilson says, saddened to hear about the altercation at the school yesterday.
What altercation?
Yeah, there was down at Madison Park. There was an individual. It was a large fight there, and someone had a firearm in their possession. Right. This is, that's why I say, we're not dealing with all of the problems. That these are not going to go away. So you're going to just basically, there's no learning really taking place there now. And now you're going to house more people who are in the same situation. You're moving the people out of there. I understand. If I'm a parent and my child is at the O'Brien and next door is a school that is all these problems, dysfunctional is the right word. Yes, I wouldn't. Even if they have to travel, but if it's going to be safer and less disruptive to their education, I'm going to buy into that, right? And you'll see the population increasing because of where it's now being housed. Those folks are not going to be intimidated about having their kids go to the complex in West Roxbury compared to the one in Roxbury.
Well, can I just add to that?
Good.
Can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you.
Yeah. Let me just say that first and foremost, that the bottom line is that what's going on with that whole thing on that move in terms of Mayor Wu. This is about they want to focus on STEM education. And that they want to they already talked about the difficulty our youngsters would have to be able to get to that complex, but they want to increase the numbers and be advantageous to the academic pursuits of white students. That's what that's about. And so we have to make it very clear. We're talking about forming a group called Moving O'Brien Defiant, because of the fact that we got to make a stand to let this man know that she can't just go for what she did with that press conference and what she continues to do right now with total disregard, and it gets back to what y'all are saying too, is that politically there's no respect for what we do, but we got to make a stand about the school. And look here, she's talking about putting $50 million into that West Roxbury complex. Put that into Madison Park and O'Brien, and you'll have state-of-the-art facility and can improve the academic performance of Madison Park. So they treat us like we don't have any intelligence.
Right. So Pastor Hobbs has a few more comments, and I want to respond to what Siddiqui said.
So Minister Flint says, who actually went there to disrupt it. Actually, she said, it's ridiculous. Black people will not support each other.
Hello.
Patrick Wilson goes on to say the NAACP recently issued a traveler's advisory for Florida due to DeSantis policies. And Pastor Barbara Hamilton, she says, I agree. They do need to take a tour of our communities and weigh in on these issues. We have METCO, which she works for, headquarters, the oldest running voluntary desegregation program.
No, on the front page of the Bay State Banner, there's two issues that are highlighted here. State Senator Liz Miranda and Senate staff on tour of the Nubian Square area, including tropical foods, grocery. That's a nice photo op, but what is that changing on there? And then, we were talking about on the way in, Pastor Hobbs, Makia Baker Gomez, a community leader, an activist, politically involved. We lost her over the last week or so. So I'm saying is that, and where was she? On her way to another event trying to empower our folks. Folks, 74 years old. We don't have a lot of people replacing them. And so this is why this is allowed. The younger people now are not engaged in a way that they need to be meaningful. That old saying, those who don't learn from history are doomed to repeat it. This is what we're doing. We're just repeating it. Like I said, Donald Trump is just a modern day version of George Wallace. School learning is an issue that has been a part of our history of the lack of it. Madison Park is just symbolic, right? Because Latin Academy, the O'Brien in Latin should be the exception, not the norm. It should be the norm, not the exception. So the fact that this school is being moved, it's no different than people being moved out of these communities.
Well,
right?
but as you go through, and I'm a student of history, and I think history tells us where we're going, because there's
should be no mystery.
There's very few new ideas in the world. Someone had it before you arrived. I see the same thing all throughout history, where they tried to mitigate through money the effectiveness of black education. They're doing the same thing here with the O'Brien move. Even with that move, Larry and Siddiqui,
proposed move.
Well, okay, I give you that.
It's gonna happen.
I give you that.
No, if we step up, it's not gonna happen.
But here, if you move the facility and you replace it with what? With the same ineptitude, with the same dysfunctional education that you're having in that environment now? What about the security of the
here's
people?
why I know it's going to happen.
Okay.
Because the voters voted that they wanted an elected school committee. What do we have? We still have,
Do you have
an
it?
appointed one.
Yeah.
We still have an appointed one, right?
Okay.
Voters vote for things.
So well, she doesn't listen to the vote.
Not
to the voters.
There's
Well,
no
she
cost.
will. She will if this community stands up and says, "Under no way."
And when is that going to happen, Siddiqui? And I'm trying to be optimistic. But when
we're
is
hoping that once the community becomes aware of this situation, that they will stand up. Because I'm going to contact the
Siddiqui,
banner. Because I'm
okay.
disappointed
How many
in
people read the
Yahoo
banner
because he
other
did
than
that story?
Right.
But he didn't cover yesterday's press conference in terms of the fact that the
Siddiqui,
community
the banner
is upset
comes
about
out
this.
right. The banner comes out once a week. This is an everyday problem, right? We have, like I said, if we had an elected school board, they would be charged with deciding on whether or not this is going to. They have a lot of say in what schools close and what schools move, right? But who do they work for? They work for the mayor, so it's going to happen. I've seen it.
Actually, I don't agree. Right now, the mayor.
You may not agree.
If we, because people said, you know what, Nubian Square is never going to happen.
They changed the name.
And it did based on the fact that the people stepped up. And what I'm saying is that if we come together as a community and say, Mayor Wu, you're not going to move the O'Brien because she's got to get reelected and she wants our vote. So the bottom line is she will listen. Right now, nobody's stepping up, and she's saying, well, these people ain't saying nothing, so I don't care. I'll do what I want.
Okay, so let's revisit this. You heard it here, right? That the difference between Mayor Walsh saying he calculated politically, what am I losing here if I change the name and I don't change their situation? There's no loss there for him, right? He gives you the name change. Okay, and I'm not saying that's not a victory. I'm not disputing. I'm not belittling that. We've got 2 minutes, but we've got nothing going on. So let's grab this other call. Ditko, thank you, sir. I want to grab this other call. Pastor Hobbs has a call on. It's calling in on the phone because he can't get through the lines.
Okay. Go ahead. You can talk. You're on.
Yeah, you got 2 minutes.
2 minutes.
Good morning. Good morning, Larry. Good morning, Dr. Bradley.
Good morning.
Anybody else that is on the call.
Good morning.
I am so disappointed in Mayor Wu that it just doesn't make any sense. There's a lot of things that's going on in our community that our people don't even know about, and they need to know.
So, Priscilla, let me interrupt you real quickly, and if you can hold on, we'll keep you at the top of the hour. But the disappointment should not be in the mayor. The disappointment should be in ourselves. She's one person.
Well, that's true too.
She's one person, right? And if the rest of us, if she knows that the other tens of thousands of people in our community are going to stand up at the ballot box, that would change her mind.
There you go.
I'm sorry. So I'm not disappointed in the mayor. She's doing what she thinks is best for the people that support her at the ballot box.
All right. Well, that's your opinion, Larry.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I am disappointed in our community because we don't come out.
That's
right. It was me and Siddiqui up there yesterday, and I don't have any children in the Boston Public School, but I care about children, and I feel like if we as black folks don't step up, this is going to be the story. And I'm telling you, with the passing of Makia,
exactly,
I'm about done with Boston.
No,
because she was on her way to a community event.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking
Thursday,
about.
she was out passing out flyers.
Right.
Friday, she was going to Dunkin' Donuts to make sure that we had breakfast the next morning. It's ridiculous. People talk a lot of trash, but people don't stand up, and I'm sick of it.
Yeah.
I'm tired of our black people not standing up for ourselves. What are we going to do? Keep laying down and let people trample over us? It doesn't make any sense.
No, that's no point.
And I'm tired of it, and I'm tired of fighting for these trifling people that won't stand up for themselves. And I'm not going to get out there and be putting my life on line for these crazy people that won't do anything, won't come to a meeting, won't send an email, won't make a phone call. And I'm sorry, I'm emotional, but it doesn't make any sense. The fact that I lost one of my best friends last week just hurts my heart.
Yep, Priscilla.
And I'm not going to get over it soon. I don't care.
I hate to.
But it's also it's also the our elected officials.
Right.
And if we as black people don't see it and don't understand it, look at that budget.
Yeah.
Look at the budget.
Priscilla.
I took that budget out to over
Priscilla, Priscilla, and I hate that, you've been in this seat. We're at the top of the hour. Can you stand by, or can you call in on the main line? I want to talk about that budget. I don't want to cut you off.
We have time
not be respectful. Exactly. So can you call back on the phone line, and I want to get into that budget.
All right, I'll call back after 9.
Okay.
What time is it?
I'll
call back.
All right.
Thank you.
Folks, thank you for listening. If you want to call back in, no, it's real, and that's the raw emotion.
It's very real.
All right, we got to take our break. Pastor Houses Dylan's giving us the. We're out of here.
Any MC in the game, it ain't a challenge if your music reflects who you are. Then you's a coward. I can see through the lies you ain't living what you spitting.
Those folks got to come to the table collectively to deal with the problem. So I was someone asked me over the holiday what I felt about Commissioner Ross pushing back on the ACLU having access